Neil Purry is Area 16 area governor, and that spans from the Centralia Chehalis area down to Longview, Kelso, and the Woodland area. My name is Jamie Gregory. I'm with Area 12. We call ourselves the Mighty 12s, largely in East Pierce County. It includes from Lakewood to Parkland to Graham, South Hill, Puyallup, and down to Sumner. Our assignment or our opportunity is to speak with you how to have a purposeful board, also known as a board with purpose, and an engaged board. So we have our assignment, how to purposeful engaged board. You know, before we can have our board have purpose or be engaged, we have to create our board. We have to have a board. So let's look at what's involved in building a board to start out with. So I would call that, populating your board or building your board. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One is you inherit board members. Many people have held board positions because they want to have some continuity several times in those several years, and you might have a secretary or a treasurer that's held that position many years, so you actually inherit some board members. The other way is you get to choose your board members. You get to build your own board, populate your board. What I would argue is probably a very good methodology of that is make sure you choose people that are advocates, right? Not just advocates of Rotary and for your particular club, but advocates for you personally and the vision that you have for the club. The last thing you probably want to do is choose to have an activist on your board that fights you every step of the way. So you want to have some advocacy. When you have an opportunity to choose your board, this is your opportunity to build a board with advocates. So again, populating your board, we talk about inherited board members. We talk about choosing your board members. What kind of members do you want to choose to build your board outside of that personal advocacy? Let's go through some of those. Diversity. You want to have as diverse board as possible. What it really comes down to is you want your board to be a reflection of your club. And hopefully your club is a reflection of the community you serve. Mix of ages is awesome. Generational differences really makes for a great dynamic board. Different backgrounds, certainly like different vocations, which means different skill sets and different cultures. Talked about skill sets. What else is there? Oh, and certainly tolerance. You want people that maybe aren't so set in their ways that they can't embrace change a little bit too. Probably the most important thing I would say is to build trust on your board. In addition to the trust, one of the things that I look for when building a board or choosing people to serve with is the balls, right? Or is that individual going to be reliable and dependable? And probably most importantly, are they going to be available? So again, your board should be a reflection of your club, just as we hope your club is a reflection of the community you serve, with regard to diversity, cultures, skill sets, and again, trust. Okay, trust is basically someone that you know will do what they say they'll do. All right, so the most effective thing that you can build on. Okay, so the most effective thing you can build in your board, I think, is trust. If you'd like to read a great book that details its importance, try reading The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. Know that trust is like confidence. You have to trust yourself first, that you'll do what you say you'll do. And then to develop that trust in yourself, there's 4 different components of that. One is integrity, which is I will do what I say I'll do. There's intent, which is I truly intend to do what I say I'll do. Capabilities is I have the skill set to complete what I say I'll do. And results, I complete what I say I'll do, and I meet or exceed those expectations of others. So those, I would say, are the types of people that you would like to recruit for your board. A way to build that trust on your board is to meet with each board member individually. I think oftentimes we just meet with the board itself and we don't have a chance to really develop a relationship. And it's important to meet with each board member individually and do it on their own turf. Do it either at their own place of business or their own home or a neutral place. Don't do it where you have a sense of comfort. Do it where they are comfortable. So again, develop a personal relationship with that board member or potential board member. The next thing, know their why. You know, we heard DG Mo talk a little bit about in fundraising this morning. The why is very important. That's what we really learned from Craig Gillis a couple of years ago. And if you really understand the why someone is in Rotary, that's knowing that person at a deeper level, and it'll be it makes for an effective relationship based on trust. The other thing is discover basic information about your existing board member or the board member that you're recruiting. Acronym is FORD, so talk about their family, their occupation, talk about their recreation, what do they do for fun, and maybe their dreams or their direction that they would like to see. So we're talking about trust. We're talking about building that relationship. One thing you'd like to be able to do is measure that future board member or that board member's passion for the club. You'd like to know their personal and financial commitment, and their willingness to participate not only at the board level, but certainly in all the events and things that you do in the community. And Neil, tell me a little about how foundation giving, how they can find out some information on a board member regarding their personal financial commitment to Rotary ahead of time.
So one way you can do that, your foundation director or your president should have access to Rotary International. So you go to My Rotary, and from there you can go to Manage, and through Manage you can get a lot of reports. So club foundation directors typically can go there and find out. There's a very good report called Club Giving Report, and that's where individual members, as they donate money, it's a personal accounting for each member basically in that report. And actually each member can go there if they sign up for My Rotary, and they can access their own donation history if they like to do that.
Okay, so that's a way to get an understanding of the financial commitment to Rotary that all your board members are presently at. Get a snapshot look that way. So now we've built the trust, we have relationships with our board members, our board is set. Now it's time to plan and schedule a planning retreat to develop your goals for an upcoming Rotary year, inviting club members and incoming board members. And Neil, I know your club does a retreat. Can you give us an idea of what that looks like?
Yeah, we've done that a few times. One time we combined a retreat with a visioning. So we do a visioning session. Visioning session is you invite members and incoming leaders for the club to a Saturday or Sunday or weekend, 3-4 hour place where you normally don't meet, and coffee, donuts, other one, and basically brainstorm and do a visioning for next 5 years. And that after that session is done, then you meet again if you have time for the incoming leaders to develop their incoming year's goals. And again, you can invite other members to do that. Again, that's the idea session. And from that planning retreat is where the goals could be developed for coming year. And with that, you have a lot of participation in the club itself. Everybody has sort of buy-in into the incoming goals.
All right, so again, plan some sort of a retreat that's not during the normal meeting time. Don't confuse this with a club assembly. This is a sort of a visioning retreat. Keep in mind, our district 5020 actually has visioning people in our district who can help facilitate meetings like that. So ideally, you've got somebody in your club that can help walk you through that process. A president or president-elect could certainly do it, but it's even better if sort of an impartial third party or someone that's really familiar with how to facilitate that type of exercise does that for you. Okay, so at this retreat, it's time to set goals for the year, and this is really important because if you've tasked each of your board members with a little bit of homework prior to that visioning exercise, simply have them go to the Learning Center, Rotary International, and take a class that's associated with their responsibility. They've got great classes on treasurers, on secretary, on club, on image, public image, on the foundation. Prospective board member or existing board member actually takes the 15 or 20 minutes and goes through one of those training exercises. You'll find that they come very prepared for knowing their scope of work. So a great way to set goals for a year is simply looking at what's required for the President's Citation. President's Citation is something that the Rotary International President usually fine-tunes a little bit every year, but I can guarantee you there's going to be 3 pieces to it that are always there, and it's going to be public image, it's going to be membership, and it's going to be foundation. And if you look at all 3 of those things, you can see how they're interrelated, but your goals are going to be centered around one of those 3 things. And so the ideal thing is to have a board member that's assigned to one of those goals in the Rotary President's Citation, and they can report on that on a weekly or a monthly basis, certainly quarterly to the club at the least, and get an idea of where they're at in receiving that citation. We were very fortunate in Area 12 last year that actually all 6 clubs in that area received the President's Citation, and it's simply by doing their due diligence and providing a board member with the responsibility, which helps engage them to fulfill that piece of the President's Citation. So we're on purpose, which is your mission and vision of the club. Your mission and vision and purpose, it can be unique to your club. It should be. It can be broad, like something like, we serve children's basic needs, or it can be fine-tuned and more specific, like we provide a backpack program for school-aged children in our district or something. You can look at Rotary's mission, which is pretty far-reaching. It just says we provide service to others, promote integrity and advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business, professional, and community leaders. That's an overlying mission that you can certainly embrace as a club mission as well. You can look at the areas of focus as a way to find purpose within your club. And that is, we direct our efforts in 6 areas to enhance the local and global impact. The most successful and sustainable projects and activities tend to fall in the areas of promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies. So those would be the areas of focus. You can look at the Rotary values of service and fellowship, diversity, integrity, and leadership, and use those. Goals, all right. Schedule a program for goals presentation. So after you've met as a club assembly or a club retreat and gone through a visiting process, now it's time to report back to the club. Anil, what would be an example of how you would put that little presentation together by board members?
Yeah, so the club can decide to have the program, which is 20-30 minutes long, as part of the club meeting. And that's where, after the retreat is done and President-elect has put all the goals together, and you can make a PowerPoint presentation to the club. And the list of goals in the PowerPoint, different leaders, different directors can join in presenting their goals. And in effect, each goal could be the goal of the director, depending on like foundation director or membership director. And that becomes their goal for throughout the year. And one important thing is that if possible, at the end of the presentation, ask for a club blessing, ask for club to give you a green light to proceed with the goals. That way the whole club has becomes the goals for the whole club. So they can join in accomplishing the mission for the next year. So
I want to go back just for a second on building relationships with your board members. Of course, knowing the why is very important because that gives you an idea, a foundation of why they're involved with Rotary, in particular your club. But another thing that's really important is to find out how they like best to be communicated with, right? Find out how they like best to be communicated with. Do they like to be communicated with a telephone call, one-on-one, with an email, a text? What's the best way to get information to them or a message to them? And then what's even more important is to show you are listening after you've had this one-on-one with this existing board member or prospective board member. Practice that method with them. In other words, if they said, well, I really respond to texting, when you leave the place, text them and say, hey, thanks for your time. You know, that shows that you were listening to how they would like to be communicated with. And because that's what they chose, I can guarantee you they'll respond right away too, okay? The other thing is, after you've had that meeting and you get home or back to your office, take the time to write a quick personal note. People really respond favorably to personal notes like that. And don't hesitate to have some of your own personal thank you notes or Rotary thank you notes that you can use to send to people throughout the year, but especially your board members. Board meetings. Now we're having a board meeting. We've got engagement because we've made our club purposeful. We've assigned tasks to our board members so that they can stay engaged and be responsible and accountable. But now we're going to have a board meeting. So what do those look like? Let's go through some of those steps. So important thing with a board meeting is always have an agenda. Always have an agenda. And that's a physical written agenda. You send it out ahead of time to your board members several days before the board meeting. Hopefully they'll print it out themselves and save you from having to print out a bunch of copies. But when you come to the board meeting, be prepared and have a few copies of your agenda that you can hand out to people that didn't bring their own. Then assign on your own a number of minutes for each of the topics that will be discussed, for each report that will be given. That certainly gives the people that serve on your board an idea of how much time they have to give their report, but it really shows that you respect the overall time. In other words, if our board meeting is an hour, that we're going to be able to fulfill the goals within our agenda within 45 or 50 minutes. We can always have 5 or 10 minutes to talk about big picture stuff, 30,000 foot level vision type conversations to help grow your club or improve what your club's doing already. So again, assign the number of minutes next to everyone's topics on the agenda, so you have an idea of how much time is going to be dedicated to each of those conversations. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is expect reports from your board members, and they'll provide that information every meeting. I've seen Rotary clubs that actually have officers report at each of the meetings. That does a couple of things. One is it creates that great transparency that I think all clubs look for between their membership and their board. But it also pretty much ensures that your board member is going to show up at the meeting if they have an assignment of providing a report. Understand Robert's Rule of Order. Okay, think about this. 20 years ago in Rotary recruited leaders in the community. Okay, so these people, for the most part, already had an understanding of how a board went, how a board operated. It understood that about basic Robert's Rules of Order. Now, Rotary tends to, and I'm glad we do, we recruit anybody with a servant heart. And with that, we recruit people that don't have experience on community boards. We recruit people that hadn't had any experience leading a board meeting. So now Rotary's in a position where we don't just recruit leaders, we develop leaders. And one of that is making sure that our leaders are familiar with Robert's Rule of Order. So if you're a president or president-elect and you're getting ready to take over a club and you feel like you don't have a lot of background in that, make sure that you partner yourself with a board member that you know does have familiarity with those Robert's Rule of Order and help lead you through those first few meetings. You can have them sit right next to you to help go through that agenda. They can be your timekeeper on the times. The other thing is, if you're not comfortable with public speaking, Rotary International has a great partnership with Toastmasters. And so you can consider joining a local Toastmasters group and take advantage of that Rotary International partnership and participate there. Make sure your secretary takes the meeting minutes. Okay, very important, and even more important to send those minutes out as quickly after the meeting as possible. That does a couple of things. One, it means it already gets done, which is important. But the second thing is, it's paraphrasing, it's getting a synopsis of that meeting while it's still pretty fresh in everybody's mind, so they can see if there actually is a mistake that needs to be changed or an edit that needs to be made. So get the meetings out as quickly as possible, because one of the first things that you'll do at your board meeting, obviously, is approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Okay, Keith?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I'm thinking of asking one of our board members to be a parliamentarian to kind of keep track of Robert's Rules of Order. Has anybody experienced that or used that tactic?
I think that's a great idea. Anybody out there have somebody that's basically assigned the task of being the parliamentarian? That's a great idea, though, because that's someone who can certainly lead you through the asking for a question, getting a second, having discussion, calling to a vote, things like that. There's usually somebody that understands maybe your bylaws pretty well as well. Patrick, did you have a question? Should the president quickly review the draft minutes before they go? Oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. So when your secretary creates the minutes, have he or she bounce those off of you as a president first to make sure they match what you recalled as well. Generally, if there are any additions or corrections or edits to minutes, you as president, being the person that's probably most familiar with the conversations that were had at that meeting, is going to be able to make those before they ever go out to the board for approval. So that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay, we talked about Toastmasters. Again, encourage reports from the board at those meetings. Actually, you'll probably have them as assignments so that all the relevant board committees can report at those board meetings. Engagement. So there's two guaranteed ways, two very proven ways to have a positive relationship on board performance and engagement. And those things to do is to have some sort of a survey, which can be given to existing board members, new board members, and also a survey for the membership. Let's show that. Okay, there we go. Some sort of board evaluation process. So that would be the survey. I think this is important because you can really ask the board members questions like, do you feel like you have a voice at your meetings? Do the board, is the board meeting at a time and place that's convenient for me? Does our board allocate a certain amount of time every month to visioning and to listening to new ideas? Just things like that. You want to make sure that they feel valued, that they're being held accountable, and ask some questions that will discuss those things. One thing, when you do a survey like that, a lot of times you'll see 1 through 5 or something as the high to low, or you'll see a yes to no with 4 numbers in between. What I'm getting at is there's usually something right down the middle you can choose. Take that one out. Make sure they're on one side of the fence or the other. Make sure it's no or not sure or I kind of think so and yes. Make it that way so you really get an idea of how somebody feels about their board position and the board itself. The other thing is having structured, real intentional board orientation. I see way too often board members that are chosen and asked to participate. They say yes, and they don't hear from anybody until it's time to go to their first board meeting. So again, to that board orientation, Even if it's something your club is just creating, that's perfect. That's perfect, because now that orientation is created on your watch. It's going to be something that your club will continue to do forever. And your existing board members, the ones you inherited, they can be part of it. So when they're teaching a board orientation, in a way, they're receiving their board orientation, which is kind of like they're treating others like they wish they'd been treated when they came onto the board. But part of the board orientation will be to go to the Learning Center and look at that that learning piece that is associated with their board responsibility. Oh, this is awesome. This is the 7 things to do that will guarantee a poor board experience. All right, number 1, absolutely don't provide board members with clear job descriptions or share your vision of what board engagement looks like. All right, if you want to guarantee that you're going to have a disgruntled board member, don't provide them any job description, don't give them any orientation at all. So we know that's a bad thing, right? What I would suggest for your very first board meeting of the year is to outline the expectations of what all the board meetings are going to be like for that year. I would have a board calendar at that first one that shows when your board meetings are going to be. I'd reiterate the idea that you want to have a board meeting that's convenient for everyone. So find out if that's a great time and a great place and a great day of the week to have your board meetings. You know, I've seen boards that have their meeting 1 hour before their regular meeting. And that does a couple of things. One, they're already going to be there. They're just there an hour early. The second thing is it has a definite ending because they have to get to the start of their meeting. If you're having it in the same location that your meetings are, you know, same dining room or whatever, then it gets a little bit awkward sometimes because you're trying to finish up a meeting, but the rest of the membership is coming in and it's noisy, a lot of ambient noise. I really would suggest that you have it in a different spot, even if it's in a building that's associated with where you meet on a regular basis. Anyway, so, but having that very first one, that's a great plan, is to have a calendar in place for the year. Again, get affirmation that when and where you're having your board meetings is suitable to everyone, and to outline the expectations of what those board responsibilities are. Every meeting, talk about the President's Citation, talk about where our club is with receiving that President's Citation. That's a real neat club achievement, and really only about 10% of the clubs attain it. So it's something to look forward to, and it makes your year defined so much easier when you follow those goals. Another thing, it says don't involve board members in activities beyond the boardroom. And some clubs have done this, and I've seen this in a lot of clubs where they're great board members, but they're maybe not such great Rotarians because they don't show up for the service projects. They don't show up for other things. You really need to have both. Again, that's their passion, commitment, participation piece that you need to look at for each board member. Oh, make sure your board meetings have few or no opportunities for meaningful discussion. And as a president, your job is to facilitate the board meeting. You want other people's voices talking about the business of the club, because that means you've done a great job of delegating and creating ownership with each of your board members for their year. Make it clear board members shouldn't question assumptions, probing questions, or unwelcome at meetings. You know, I love that about new board members, because they don't have the experience of being told they can't do something, so they bring up some great ideas. Don't put that fire out. Let's see, make sure board members receive materials on board meetings last possible minute. You know, nothing's worse than being handed an agenda when you get to the meeting and not knowing ahead of time what you're supposed to be talking about or what you should be prepared to discuss. Last one, make it really hard for board members to find information. You know, the best advice you can give to a prospective board member is to let them know about that learning center and where to go for to access resources. Also know that all board members, including the president and all of her directors, they should have a hotline or a pipeline to their assistant governor, area governor, because they can connect you with some great resources. I tell you what you will find out is that as our district directory goes to predominantly online, we do that because it's A, it's cheaper, but B, it also can be updated. It's current all the time. And there's just about an answer to most all your questions are in that directory.
Got a raised hand, Jamie.
Yes, I have a question
Yeah, Brian.
as far as job descriptions,
Right.
because there was one member that was asking for a job description for her role,
Sure.
and I wanted something written. And I looked in our club, I couldn't find anything. I did a search. I looked at the district, I found some, but like the officers and RI. So is there any place where all the potential job roles or descriptions are written down somewhere?
There is in the Rotary International website, which would be the My Rotary. Look at the Learning Resource Center.
Okay.
You're going to find there's not only a description, but there's also a video that's associated with each one of those positions. So yeah, there's some great job descriptions in there. And again, some at the club level, the job description may look a little bit different than the generic one that Rotary International has created or uses. And don't be scared of that. This is your franchise. This is your opportunity to fine tune it any way you'd like. 10 things written in stone. These things aren't one of them. Right. So yeah, look at the Rotary International one and evolve your own personal club job description from that, but it gives you a start. Again, governing boards need to be willing to take calculated risks, including challenging assumptions, testing traditional ways of doing business, and introducing innovative ideas. And if you can allocate some time at each of your board members or each of your board meetings to introduce innovative ideas in a non-threatening, safe environment, absolutely do that. I think you'll have a great Rotary year if you give people the opportunity to think big. If anyone needs to contact me, there's my email address and phone number. Of course, most importantly, go Cougs. Anybody have any questions?
Jamie, I have a question. This is Catherine Nelson, Tacoma Rotary 8.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
You said something about your visioning retreat is different than your club assembly. Could you tell me what you think should be covered in the club assembly? I
think in a club assembly, it's an opportunity for every club member to weigh in on some of the important things that you've already talked about and created in your vision. So in other words, your board has fine-tuned a vision of what the club's going to be doing. And this is an opportunity for the club to weigh in on that before it becomes set in stone, because like Neil said, this is the opportunity for the board to vote on that agenda for the year. And so I see the assembly as more of an affirmation or an opportunity to discuss the vision that you created in your board retreat.
Yeah, I have one other, Jimmy, on the visioning. You can also invite some outside moderator, and then like I say, it's a really more brainstorming session, right? And look into more 5-10 years outlook in visioning session.
I have a large club assembly because it ends up being about 66 people. And do you do any member introductions or that type of thing?
Wow, with almost 70 people, I mean, your club assembly, which means you've got about 25% or 20% of your club that's coming to a club assembly, which means they're engaged at a higher level than the average member. They're going to be pretty solid Rotarians, and they probably know each other, but I would take a minute just to value them by recognizing, again, who they are. And you know what, Catherine? I think if you had that big of a club assembly, it'd be worth every minute. First of all, if you told them it was going to take 2 hours or something, that's fine. Have a little intermission, but I wouldn't hesitate having that that first hour being introductions of everyone and learning their why.
Yes, that's what I was thinking too. Because we're going to be doing it on Zoom,
Right?
I think I'm actually going to break the club assembly into 3 groups.
Okay, what would those 3 groups be?
Well, all the things related to membership is one group, membership classification, PANDACA, orientation, I forget. And then one group is going to be a lot of our service, you know, international grants, community grants,
Right.
projects. You know, anyway, they do kind of fall. We have a military committee, and you know, so some of the stuff doesn't go together as well as the membership group. But at the club assembly, we have the committee chairs, which are usually 2, and then we have the board liaison, which is 1. So when you have 22 committees, that's 66 people plus some officers. So that's why we're going to divide it up. But I just was thinking that we'd spend some time on the why, and because of that, I was going to, you know, break it up, and I just wondered if that made sense to somebody more experienced.
It absolutely makes sense. And I think and if you don't do that, Catherine, I think you run into the risk of not having the sort of trust that you need to have between you and the members, between your board members and your committee members. And it's just a really neat opportunity. You have a unique opportunity. You know, you're the president of the mothership of Rotary clubs around here. It's not Tacoma 8. It's not number 8 because you decided you liked the number 8. It's 8 because it was the 8th Rotary club in the nation. You've been around for 110 years, for crying out loud. And so just the fact that you would create an environment, a safe environment where people get to know each other at a little bit deeper level, because you're going to find out that why that they're involved with Rotary. I think that will create a trust factor that will pay big dividends for Tacoma. Any other questions at all?
Yes, I have a question as to what is the club president's citation?
It's not the club president citation. That sometimes that gets confused as a club president wants to win the citation award because he or she thinks it's an award that they win, but it's something the club wins. The president part of it is the Rotary International President Citation. It's the criteria that he or she is creating to recognize clubs at an international level based on their contributions to public image, to the different areas of focus, to a foundation, and to membership. So yeah, they're outlined. They're on the RI website, and if you need more clear information about it, please contact your area governor, and he or she can get that information to you. Mark Maloney has recently revised those based on COVID-19, because obviously many clubs won't be able to achieve their fundraising goals because of things that had to be stopped after March 17th. So
we got a couple other raised hands.
okay.
Jamie, one is Valerie Featherstone.
Hey, Valerie.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Hi, Jamie. I just want to thank you so much for this presentation. I'm president-elect, and it's been really, really helpful. I'm from the Rotary Club of Comox in beautiful BC.
Oh, very good. Well, is that the home of our district governor?
It is indeed our beautiful district governor, yes.
All right, that's exciting, Valerie.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, you focus a lot on building trust. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. And then also, I've been writing frantically since this presentation began. Will you be making your slides or your presentation available to us later?
Sure. Just if you want that sent to us, just send it to Anil or to myself. Send an email or call us, and we'll make that available.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome, Valerie.
Walt is next.
Yeah, now that we're Zooming our board meetings, and we probably will be in the future, since you can easily record on Zoom, any thoughts, and you got to announce that you're recording,
Right.
any thoughts about recording your board meetings so the minutes can be very minimal, and if somebody wants to know all the details, they can hear the recording?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a city council meeting. You still have to have hard minutes. So I think your bylaws are still going to require that you've got minutes written. I don't know about you, but I'm not real good about going back and watching a video of a meeting I've already been in. But I think it makes it convenient, certainly for board members that did not attend, that they can go back and look, see what was discussed at a meeting, or see if it followed the agenda that was sent out ahead of time. But certainly have your secretary continue to write minutes. I think what you'll find is that the minutes are a lot more accurate, because now it's easy for them to go back and use the video as a resource.
Yeah, I was mentioning that because our local municipal research services center for the local jurisdictions recommends minutes be minimal. Just record the actions taken, but that doesn't tell people what actually was discussed as well.
Right. Yeah, I think it's it's still nice if somebody, even if it's just a PDF in a file that your own members can access via Club Runner or something. I think it's still valuable to have the written word of what was discussed and what was voted on at a board meeting.
One other, Brent Olson has a question, Jimmy.
Brett Olson. All right, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brent. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I got muted suddenly by somebody. Brent Olson here. I have a suggestion, a simple one and then a little more complex one.
Sure.
Suggestion is that there is a number of courses out there, webinars and things like this on parliamentary procedures. This is not rocket science, but there's some good one. A friend of mine has a firm called Jurassic Parliamentary Procedure. A number of people from my club have used that. People from throughout the district have used that. For somebody that's intimidated by the idea of using parliamentary procedures, this is a good starter. There's also a lot of other stuff, but I would say don't let that become too intimidating, because there's a few simple rules that you probably can learn in 20 minutes to half an hour that would do a lot to increase your comfort with this.
Brent, that's very good. Do you think that's something you can make available to us on our district website?
I hate to plug a business, as there are other entities. Let me see. Let me think about that and maybe do that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. If you find there's a free or something place that a president-elect could go to give themselves a little brush-up course on parliamentary procedure.
There's a lot of resources out there. The other thing I wanted to suggest, there's a marvelous opportunity between December and June for Rotarians that are coming on the boards or president-elects and so forth. Our Rotary Constitution has us electing new board members in December.
Okay.
So there's a period of time between December and June where there's a lot of training that could be done to not only help people become knowledgeable about being on the board, but also understanding the issues that they will have to work with as club goals and things within their area of cognizance. So I would strongly recommend that people use this time for leadership training, and not only for the training of directors and officers, but also for committee chairs. And rather than just taking office on the 1st of July as a committee chair or as a director or officer, be prepared, have some things, learn about your job, There's not only pets, but there's other sort of trainings that are available. I say this is a marvelous opportunity for somebody to think ahead, get up to speed on things, and hit the ground running come July 1. So you don't need to be a deer in headlight on this one. There's a lot of people that have done it before. This is a great time in which leadership training in the club can take place and then be followed through on once you're installed as an officer or a director of your club.
Great ideas, very great comments. I appreciate you. Thank you. Also, keep in mind, you have inherited board members and you have new board members. I don't know of any club that turns an entire board over every year. So what Brent is speaking to is for existing board members maybe to go back and familiarize themselves with a job description of what they've been doing the last few years if they don't know. And the second thing is for new board members to become very comfortable. So again, they're not drinking from a fire hose on 1 July. Okay, next session. And God love you. Thanks for coming to this one.